Before you fall in love with my son, I want you to hear something from me. Not because I want to warn you away from him, and not because I believe a mother has the right to decide who deserves her child's heart. I simply want you to understand the man behind the smile you may someday fall for. Because I have watched him become that man. I have seen him when the world was watching, and I have seen him when nobody was. I have seen the boy he once was, the young man who struggled to understand his own heart, and the person he slowly became after life taught him that loving someone is not the same as simply wanting them. If you ever look at my son and think he is strong because he rarely complains, I want you to know that his strength was never born from an easy life. It was built quietly, one difficult day at a time. There were nights when he sat beside me without saying much, staring at a cup of tea that had already gone cold. I would sometimes ask, "What are you thinking about?" And he would smile that small smile of his and say, "Nothing, Mum. I'm just tired." But mothers learn to hear what their children don't say. I knew when he was hurting. I knew when something had disappointed him. I knew when someone had left a wound inside him that he didn't know how to explain. And I knew that sometimes the strongest thing he could do was simply sit there and breathe until the sadness became bearable again. So before you fall in love with my son, understand this. He may not always tell you when he is hurting. He may not always ask for comfort. Sometimes he will try to carry his sadness quietly because he does not want to make it someone else's burden. Please don't mistake that silence for indifference. There was a time when he was still a little boy, and I remember him coming home after something had gone wrong at school. I could see disappointment on his face before he even opened the door. He threw his little bag onto the chair and walked straight toward his room. I followed him. "Are you going to tell me what happened?" I asked. "No." I smiled. "That's a very honest answer." He looked at me, almost annoyed, and then his expression softened. "I just don't want to talk about it." So I sat beside him. I didn't force him. I didn't lecture him. I simply stayed. After a few minutes, he whispered, "Mom, what if I try my best, and it still isn't enough?" I remember those words because they sounded much older than he was. I put my hand on his shoulder and said, "Then you try again tomorrow. Your worth was never decided by one bad day." He didn't answer, but he leaned against me. And I realized that sometimes children don't need their mothers to solve the world. They only need to know that someone will remain beside them while they learn how to face it. My son carried that lesson into adulthood. He learned that people can disappoint you without becoming your enemies. He learned that love can end without making it meaningless. He learned that heartbreak can change you without having to make you bitter. I watched him fall in love for the first time. I didn't know everything about the relationship, of course. A mother doesn't need to know every detail. But I knew enough to recognize the change in his eyes. He was lighter. He laughed more. He would sometimes look at his phone and smile for no obvious reason. I teased him one evening. "You look suspiciously happy." He tried to hide his smile. "I'm not." "Oh, really?" "No." "You're smiling." "I smile." "Not like that." He laughed, and for a moment I saw the little boy who used to come running through the house whenever something wonderful happened. That was when I understood something about my son. When he loves someone, he does not love halfway. He pays attention. He remembers small things. He notices when someone is tired. He remembers the stories people tell him. He listens to things they thought nobody heard. He doesn't believe that grand gestures are the only proof of love. To him, love can be as simple as remembering how someone takes their coffee, asking whether they arrived safely,
sitting beside them when they are having a difficult day, or giving them space when they need to breathe. But there is something else you should know. Because my son loves deeply, he can also be hurt deeply.
And I have seen that happen. I remember one evening when he came home unusually quiet. He walked into the kitchen, poured himself some water, and stood there without drinking it. I looked at him. What happened? Nothing. I knew that answer. I waited. Eventually he said, "Sometimes you can give someone everything you know how to give, and they still can't stay." My heart broke for him. I didn't ask who. I didn't ask why. I simply said, "Did you love honestly?" "Yes." "Did you treat her with respect?" "Yes." "Did you try to understand her?" He nodded. "Then don't punish yourself because the story ended differently than you hoped." He looked at me and said, "But Mum, I wanted it to work." I know. That was all I could say. Because sometimes there is no wise sentence that can remove another person's pain. Sometimes all a mother can do is sit beside her son while his heart learns how to live with what it cannot change. The days afterward were quiet. He went through his responsibilities. He smiled when people expected him to smile. He continued moving forward. But I knew he was healing. And healing is not always dramatic. Sometimes healing is waking up one morning and realizing you haven't thought about the person for several hours. Sometimes it is hearing a song that once hurt and discovering that it doesn't hurt anymore. Sometimes it is remembering someone without wanting them back. I watched my son learn those things, and somewhere along the way, he became more compassionate. Pain didn't make him cruel. It made him gentler. That is one of the things I admire most about him. Some people get hurt and decide nobody deserves their trust again. My son got hurt and decided he wanted to become someone who would never intentionally cause that kind of pain to another person. That is a very different kind of strength. So before you fall in love with my son, please understand that he may carry pieces of his past with him, not because he is still living there, but because the past taught him. His old wounds taught him to appreciate honesty. His disappointments taught him not to make promises lightly. His heartbreak taught him that affection without respect is not enough. And his loneliness taught him that being with someone and truly being seen by someone are two completely different things. If you ever become the woman he loves, don't try to become his entire world. Let him have his own dreams. Let him have his quiet moments. Let him be imperfect. Let him have days when he doesn't know what to say. And when he makes a mistake, and he will because he is human, don't make him feel that one mistake has erased everything good about him. I don't expect you to be perfect for my son. I never have. I only hope you will be honest with him, because honesty matters enormously to him. I have watched him forgive people who hurt him, but I have also watched him walk away from relationships where respect disappeared. That was not easy for him. He doesn't enjoy leaving people behind. He is the kind of person who will question himself long after someone else has stopped questioning their own actions. Was I too distant? Did I say something wrong? Could I have done more? I have heard those questions, and sometimes I wanted to tell him, "My son, you cannot save every relationship by giving more of yourself." But he had to discover that truth on his own. Love is not supposed to require you to disappear. I learned that lesson alongside him. There were moments when he would come to me and ask what I thought he should do, and I would tell him, "I can give you my opinion, "But I cannot live your life for you." He would smile. "You always say that." "Because you always ask." He would laugh. Then I would become serious. "Listen to your heart, but don't ignore your dignity." He remembered that. I know he did. Because years later, he repeated those words back to me when I was the one having a difficult day. "Mum," he said, "you taught me to listen to my heart without abandoning myself." I smiled. I didn't tell him that he had taught me something too. Children grow up, and one day you realize that the person you once protected is quietly becoming someone who protects you. That is one of the strangest and most beautiful things about being a mother. You spend years holding their hands. Then one day, they hold yours. I have watched my son become that person. I have seen him help people without telling anyone. I have seen him give when he had no reason to expect anything in return. I have watched him listen to someone who had nothing to offer him, and that tells me more about his character than any achievement ever could. Because kindness is easiest when everyone is watching. Real kindness happens when there is no audience. I remember once seeing him stop to help someone who was struggling with something ordinary. There was no camera, no applause, no reason for anyone to remember it. He simply noticed. That is my son. He notices. And if you ever love him, I hope you notice him too. Notice when he becomes quiet. Notice when he is carrying too much. Notice the small things he does without mentioning them. Notice when he says, "I'm fine," but his eyes are asking for a little patience. Don't expect him to always be the strong one. Even strong people need somewhere to rest. I have learned that from watching him. And if one day he brings you home and introduces you to me, I will probably look at you more carefully than I mean to. Not because I am searching for reasons to dislike you. I will simply be trying to understand the person who has been trusted with my son's heart. I will wonder whether you know how rare that heart is. I will wonder whether you understand that beneath his confidence, there may still be that little boy who once asked me what happens when your best isn't enough. I will wonder whether you will laugh at his vulnerabilities or protect them. Whether you will use his past against him or help him feel safe enough to leave it behind. Whether you will only love him during his easiest days or remain when life becomes complicated. Because loving someone is easy when everything is beautiful. The real question is what happens when the beauty becomes difficult to see? What happens when he is exhausted? What happens when you disagree? What happens when one of you is afraid? What happens when life doesn't follow the plan you made together? That is where love becomes real. Not in perfect photographs, not in romantic words, not in the first exciting months when everything feels new. Real love reveals itself in ordinary mornings, in difficult conversations, in forgiveness, in patience, in choosing to understand before choosing to judge. I hope that if you love my son, you will never be afraid to tell him the truth. He doesn't need someone who agrees with everything he says. He needs someone who can look him in the eyes and say, "I love you, but I think you're wrong," and then stay long enough to talk about it. He needs someone who can challenge him without humiliating him, someone who can disagree without becoming cruel, someone who understands that respect must remain even when emotions become loud. Because I have taught my son that love without respect is not love. I want for him, and I hope you believe the same. There is something else I want you to know. My son is not looking for someone to complete him. He has spent too many years learning how to become whole on his own. He has learned how to stand after disappointment, how to continue after loss, how to smile again, how to forgive himself, how to be alone without becoming lonely. So if you enter his life, Don't come because you think he needs rescuing. Come because you want to walk beside him. There is a difference. He doesn't need someone to carry him. He needs someone who will walk with him when the road becomes difficult, and he will do the same for you. That is what I believe, because I know the way he loves. I have seen it. He doesn't simply ask, "What can you give me?" He asks, "How can I make your life a little easier?" That question has always meant more to me than any romantic declaration. And perhaps that is why, despite all the things he has experienced, I still believe in love for him. Not because I think love will never hurt him again. It might. Not because I think every relationship will last forever. It may not. But because I have watched him become wiser without becoming colder, and that is something beautiful. I remember one late evening when we were sitting together, and he was talking about the future. He wasn't talking about fame or success. He was talking about peace. "I just want a simple life, Mum," he said. "I want people around me who are real." I looked at him. "What does real mean to you?" He thought for a moment. "Someone who doesn't make me wonder where I stand." That sentence stayed with me, because I realized that after everything, my son wasn't searching for perfection. He was searching for peace. And if you ever become the person he chooses, I hope you give him that. Not a life without problems. A life where problems can be spoken about. Not a relationship without disagreements. A relationship where disagreements don't become weapons. Not a love without fear. A love where both people can admit they are afraid and still hold each other's hands. If you ever fall in love with my son, don't fall in love only with his smile. Fall in love with the quiet person behind it. Fall in love with the man who remembers, the man who listens, the man who tries, the man who has been hurt and still chooses tenderness. The man who could have become cynical but chose compassion instead. And when you see his flaws, don't be surprised. He has them. So do I. So do you. So does everyone who has ever loved sincerely. The goal isn't to find someone without scars. The goal is to find someone who knows how to treat yours gently. I don't know what the future holds for my son. No mother truly does. I cannot promise you that he will never disappoint you. I cannot promise you that you will never argue. I cannot promise you that there won't be moments when both of you question whether you understand each other anymore. But I can tell you this. If he loves you, he will try. He will probably try more than you realize. And if you love him, I hope you will try too. Not because love should be exhausting, but because anything precious deserves care. There may come a day when you sit beside him and realize that the excitement of the beginning has become something quieter. Don't mistake quietness for the end. Sometimes love changes its voice. At first, love shouts. Then it whispers. At first, love is butterflies and sleepless nights. Later, it may become making sure the door is locked, leaving the last piece of dessert, remembering an appointment, warming someone's hands on a cold morning, or sitting silently beside them after a difficult day. That quieter love is the one I hope my son finds. The kind that doesn't need an audience. The kind that doesn't need constant proof. The kind that says, "I am still here." Because those 3 words can mean everything. I have spent my life loving my son, and I know there will always be a part of me that wants to protect him from every heartbreak. But I have learned that a mother cannot protect her child from every pain. Sometimes love means letting them live, letting them choose, letting them fall, letting them learn, and eventually letting another person into the space where you once stood alone. That may be the hardest part, but if that person loves him with sincerity, I will not stand in the way. I will welcome her. I will listen to her. And perhaps, in time, I will tell her the same thing I am telling you now. Please be gentle with him. Not because he is weak, because he is precious. There is a difference. My son has spent years becoming the man he is today. Every disappointment shaped him. Every friendship taught him something. Every goodbye left a lesson. Every act of kindness reminded him that goodness still matters. Every heartbreak showed him that a wounded heart can still beat. And every morning he chose to get up and continue. That is the man you may someday love. So before you fall in love with my son, hear this. Don't promise him forever if you only mean today.
Don't tell him he is safe if you intend to use his trust against him. Don't ask him to open his heart if you are planning to punish him for what you find inside. But if you truly love him, then love him honestly. Tell him when you're happy. Tell him when you're hurt. Tell him when you're afraid. Tell him when you need him. And when he needs you, don't make him ashamed of needing someone. Give him the same patience he gives you. Give him the same understanding he gives others. And when life becomes difficult, remember the person you chose before the difficult days arrived. Because one day, many years from now, you may look at him and realize that the most beautiful part of your love story was never the moment you first fell in love. It was all the moments afterward when you had a reason to walk away and chose to stay. A reason to become bitter and chose to forgive. A reason to close your heart and chose to open it again. That is the kind of love I hope finds my son. And if you are the woman who someday holds his heart, I hope you understand what I've learned by watching him grow. My son doesn't need a perfect woman. He needs a truthful one. He doesn't need someone who will never hurt him. He needs someone who will never take his pain lightly. He doesn't need someone who promises there will never be storms. He needs someone who will sit beside him when the storm comes. And if he ever looks at you the way he used to look at me as a little boy, quietly, trusting you without needing to explain why, please understand the weight of that trust. Hold it carefully. Because behind that man's eyes is still the boy I once held. The boy who wondered if trying his best would ever be enough. The boy who needed reassurance. The young man who once came home with a broken heart and tried to pretend he was fine. The man who learned how to forgive. The man who learned how to begin again. And the son who, despite everything life has taught him, still believes that love can be good. I am not asking you to promise me that you will never leave him. I am not asking you to promise me that you will love him forever. I am only asking you to be honest with him while you are there. If you love him fully. If you cannot love him, tell him gently. If you are afraid, tell him. If you need time, ask for it. But never make him question whether he deserves to be loved. Because I have watched him spend too many years learning that lesson. And I want his next chapter to be different. I want him to know what it feels like to be chosen without having to beg. To be understood without having to explain every wound. To be loved without having to earn it every morning. I want him to come home one day with that peaceful smile again. The same smile I saw when he was young and something wonderful had happened. And when I look at him then, I won't need to ask whether he is happy. I will know. Because mothers know. We know the difference between a smile someone wears for the world